Welcome, friends. I got a bunch of emails. I know you've had this happen to you before, but tons of them all in a row, and they were coming from a web server talking about not being able to renew the certificate from Let's Encrypt. So I reached out to my hosting provider, who is Dom Kirby, my good friend, I said, "Hey, this is coming from the old server," and we were in the process of migrating my cybermattlee.com to his new host, which I think I've done a good job obfuscating in here. And he said, "Holy shit, that's a lot of emails." And I said, "And yes, okay, I'll kill the account." Did those hit your inbox? They should be failing all the things: SPF, DKIM, DMARC, Scratch, and Sniff. I don't know. I have to look up Scratch and Sniff as a protocol, but I don't think that's an actual protocol, and I might get varied results on Google. But ultimately, I said, "Hey, I'll look. Let me check it out," right? I'm not sure why it's passing SPF, but I do have the benefit of having access to Easy DMARC. I went in, and by the way, they do have an improved navigation structure, an improved admin center, which I will agree with. I do like the new admin center, and the multi-tenancy is looking better and better. Personal settings at your fingertips. Awesome. Very cool. Okay, so first thing I'm going to go to is Easy SPF. I'm going to go look at that and say, yeah, hey, guess what, Dom? Your server on Web02 is there. And so Web02 is something that was allowed to send mail on my behalf. But just to take it a step further, I wanted to use the other tool, which is the email investigation tool, where I can just actually upload a .eml file. Be careful what sensitivity you put up there. It does show there. I'm not too worried about it. It's in an ephemeral workspace. But just remember, be conscious of the things that have sensitive data in them. But in this case, I went in email investigation, and I drag up the file, my email file, into this spot and say start analysis. And it'll come back and it'll tell me that this one was partially compliant. I click on that email and it'll dig in further and say, hey, listen, Matt, it passed SPF. It did not pass DKIM, and DMARC passes based on your settings, right? Because I have the SPF relaxed and DKIM relaxed passing, and the mail was delivered. So I could now go back to Dom and say that, yeah, it passed. cybermattlee.com, and if you think about it, what are we talking about here? SPF says what can send on my behalf. DKIM says what sign to send on my behalf. I guess I'm very summarizing. You can go back and watch my video on DMARC. But ultimately, this did pass because it met my standard. It is coming from something I said, this server can send mail on my behalf, just as you do with Microsoft, just as you do with third parties. But instead of that having to be in a flattened IP address range inside my SPF, or inside something like I had to go and actually put the host in there, that becomes, for me, I love to go to security trails and just pull that up, and I can see all of those hosts that are allowed to send mail, and it might mean if I can compromise one, I can abuse you with that. And so ultimately, this now puts it behind a service that has that information and responds to that as a subdomain, right? So it says pass on that, fail on DKIM. If I wanted to take this a step further, and if Dom had the technical capacitance inside his server to segment where he signs stuff, he could add DKIM and signature and capability to the mails he sends on my behalf from his mail server. But I am not willing to chase that right now, so if you want to make fun of me, please do so in the comments. Ultimately, you then go down and you can see all the received headers. This is just like any other header analysis tool that you can dump into. It's just one that's now tied to your account, tied to that domain. You can see the history of it. You can show that deliverability research that's happened in the past. That I do like. And ultimately, this shows you, hey, it was delivered from Microsoft, from this IP out to Microsoft. And yeah, ultimately, anyways, it shows the delivery trail of that. I responded back to Dom and said, hey, it's what is the updated host? Apparently, we need to actually move this to the updated host too, because if it wants to send mail on my behalf, I won't get that mail. It will be blocked. And ultimately, maybe remove this old host from that as well. I showed him the header analysis, and that's it. So just an interesting thought experiment that made me think, hey, I could make a cool video on this and talk about it. So tell me what you think below. I think that it is much better to have a service, not saying it's Easy DMARC or whatever it may be, one of the services out there in order to accomplish this, just because it makes it easy. And this is just one of those examples where I was able to, in a few minutes, go back to Dom and say, hey, man, nah, this is all good. Yeah, appreciate it. See y'all later.